Did you ever wonder where your financial advisor gets his or her advice? A lot of mutual fund companies have a vice president of tax and estate planning. And at Mackenzie Financial, that person, replacing Sandy Carney, is Carol Bezaire. Welcome, Carol.
Thanks very much, John.
And in fact, you also worked at AIM Trimark, worked with Jamie Golombek, so you come by your knowledge honestly.
I've learned from the masters, absolutely. And we have a team actually at Mackenzie now because of the demand by advisors for information on tax and estate planning. So we actually have a team of 4 that support financial advisors in tax-related issues with their clients.
So you would have gone to the last federal budget.
Yes.
In Ottawa for the lockup. You have your own lockup. And what are you finding that the financial advisors are most interested in? I'm thinking like the stock options is one of them.
Absolutely. The stock option issue is a great planning point. There's 3 different areas for the stock options. It's what's happening with the employment benefit, which is the taxable part between what you pay for your stock as an employee and what someone out on the street would pay for it. So that's a benefit to you that's taxable. What happens if your stock is underwater? And then there's another one about what the government is changing on deferring the taxation of your taxable benefit until you sell your stock. So there's 3 different issues there. And
the top one, the one that we in the press sort of focused on, was essentially the one that it meant that the employer and the employee both couldn't get that benefit.
Right.
Let's go over that one first,
Okay.
and then we'll go on to the underwater one.
Okay. Well, the first one is normally if you have a stock option that you can exchange for cash, so you don't actually get the stock, you get cash, the employer could get a deduction for it, and the employee could also take the benefit and only get taxed on 1/2 of it. So the government's going to eliminate that because that was actually meant for if you took the stock certificates yourself and then cashed them in. So it's taxed like a capital gain. So now the employer and the employee have to decide who's going to take the deduction. You can't get it both ways.
Do you think most the companies will decide to take it themselves, or maybe in the goodwill for the employees, they'd rather give it to the employees?
I would think that it's going to change the way that they offer them. So maybe you're going to get the stock certificate, not the cash, so that the employer can get the benefit and take their deduction. Then you can get your deduction if you take the certificate as opposed to cash. So it just may change the way that they handle the traditional stock options.
Now, the other one was when the stock is underwater, and I think your good example here is Nortel Networks.
Yes.
Where people would have lost a bit.
Hurt. Yes. And what happened with that, Nortel, for instance, we had a lot of people paid by stock option in the past, and they deferred their employee benefits. So one couple, I think, was actually in the National Post. They had a profile in the National Post, and they lost about $500,000 and they on their stock options because they had so much. It was a couple. And when they actually sold them when they were underwater, their employee benefit hit that they had deferred. And that's like $100,000 a year per vesting period you could defer till you sell your stock. So they ended up with something like a $250,000 tax bill they couldn't pay. So the government has now said, okay, we understand what happens with that. We've got some rules so that you can plan to minimize that employee benefit. You're going to take a tax hit on the value of your stock as opposed to your benefit that's going to be higher.
And there was a third aspect in the budget about stock options.
Yeah, the third one is...
Briefly on that one.
Briefly, if you get a stock option after this year, you can't get the deferral of that $100,000. So if you take a stock option, you're going to have to pay tax immediately on the difference between what you pay for it under your option and what the fair market value of the stock is. So that's going to be taxable income to you with a deduction in there for employee benefit. Employee benefit deduction. But you can't defer it until you sell your stock anymore. And the government wants your employer to withhold tax on that, although there's no money changing hands. So you may have to give a check for the withholding tax as well as the price of your stock when you buy it. There's going to be some planning issues around that.
And it would be a good place to start.
Yeah.
Thanks very much, Carol Bezaire, Vice President of Tax and Estate Planning for Mackenzie Financial Corp.
Thanks, John.